Hello, everyone. Hello, viewers, and welcome back to our episode number 4 of Pureblu Spotlight. Hello, Manish. How are you doing today?
Very good. How are you, Jeet?
Absolutely good. To all our viewers who are joining us for the first time, Manish and me are the founders of Pureblu. Pureblu is a tech platform for the air conditioning and refrigeration industry, primarily focused at fixing the inefficiencies in the industry. Currently, we have two products. One is the SaaS platform, a cloud based solution which service providers use to manage their business, both their data as well as their field resources and their technicians. And the other product line that we have is Smart AMC. Annual maintenance contracts for air conditioners is the best way to keep your air conditioner health in check, but we have Smart AMC. Smart AMC is an AMC. When you sign up with PureBlue, you get an IoT device, a meter free, and that's installed at your premises. And when you do that, what you get is a report that looks like this, which whereby you get the in the last 24 hours, how did you consume your energy, what was the total kilowatt per hour, how much did it cost you, and a bar chart at the bottom which tells you last week at the same day on in a 2 hour schedule what was the comparison in terms of the power consumption. Now that's a lot of information for you to save energy, and that's the unique model that PureBlue has. And please remember, all these smart AMCs that we get are managed by all the partners who are using our platform to manage their business. So we've aggregated services. So companies that who want to have a single platform to manage the entire business across India, all their outlets across India, this is going to be a fantastic platform. So, Pure Blue Spotlight is not primarily got to do anything with Pure Blue and its features or anything. We believe on three pillars of our business, which is reliability, accountability, and productivity. And through our monthly Spotlight series, we're talking about these three important factors which affect the air conditioning and refrigeration industry. Now, today we're going to talk about ESG. What is ESG and how is it going to impact the air conditioning industry? So, Manish, you want to take a first go at it and tell us what ESG is, and will this play a huge future, in the near future in most businesses, and how do you see this evolving?
Yeah, no, thanks for kind of handing it over. So ESG really is it's so let's first talk about what do the letters ESG stand for. So it stands for environmental, social, and corporate governance. So the G in governance, so that's ESG, and it's really a broad way to look at a framework for assessing the impact and sustainability and ethical practices of a company. So, it's not enough to just say, hey, we want to make as much money as a company as possible. And that's something you might have heard previously for many years when, the CEO would say, I'm only doing whatever I have to do to maximize shareholder value. If that means there are going to be many oil spills in the process of making billions of dollars, then the CEO could say, well, that's what I'm trying to do because I have to maximize shareholder value. And that's kind of the way it's been for quite some time. But now this whole idea of ESG is kind of saying, you know what? There's more to than just money. We need to make sure that we're looking at it from an environmental standpoint, a social standpoint, and a governance standpoint. So, I'll make it easy as an example because it sounds very high level when you talk about it. And even when I first started hearing about ESG, I was kind of like, yeah, that sounds, it's all right. But when you really think about it, it really kind of says, you know what? Yes, you should make money, you should make a profit, but you should also make sure that you do it so that it's sustainable and it doesn't really, have a severe impact on various factors. So an example would be, let's say, British Petroleum. So obviously, very large petrochemical giant. And if you look at it from their standpoint, environmental. So they'll look at, what are the environmental concerns that they have? Obviously, if you're drilling for oil, you may have pipeline, spillage. So that's one of the things that they would look at is saying, you know what, in our process of making money, we need to make sure that we don't have any spills or anything like that that would affect the environment negatively. So that's the first factor you'd look at. Then the second factor you'd look at would be social. So, that's more about, are you giving your employees equal pay? What's the diversity of the workforce? things like that. So, that's the whole idea is, bringing in more instead of being just exclusive, it should be more inclusive of other people and other things within the company. And then the third one is really around governance, or what they call corporate governance. And that really is, how do the CXOs or the top officials of the company, how do they, operate the company? Are they transparent? Is there financial transparency? Is there accounting transparency? Things like that. So that's really what ESG at a broad level means. So when you take a look at ESG, I give the example of how it affects, a specific company. But Ajit, from your perspective, what do you feel, and how do you think ESG would impact the air conditioning HVAC field?
You see, Manish, air conditioning consumes about 70% of the energy consumption, whether it's residential or commercial applications. Whichever application you take, it's about 70%. That's the biggest as far as energy consumption is concerned. And this industry is now slated to grow 8 times, right? Now, put the multiples together and see what's the impact on the energy consumption that's going to come up. Considering that in India, we are it's all thermal power that's providing us all this energy, and that's the climate impact that we're going to have. And moreover, air conditioners also use refrigerants, which are HCFC, hydrofluorocarbons, which affect the ozone cell. And the United Nations has the Montreal Protocol, which has been pushing to bring about a change of these refrigerants, and come up with refrigerants and develop new refrigerants which are more environment friendly. So from an environment perspective, I think air conditioners or refrigeration equipments have a large role to play. And it's very important that we keep that in mind, that we have huge ESG impacts around it. The other most important thing is also related to what we talk about, the equal pay that you were mentioning about. You see, our technicians are completely underpaid and not trained, you see. And most of them work with smaller companies or smaller MSMEs who do not have the resources to actually train them. And here's what the research says: 80% of the energy inefficiency in air conditioning and refrigeration comes from the installation and maintenance. Can you see how the entire social impact, the governance impact, and the environment is all getting impacted because of the air conditioning and refrigeration? Now, as long as it was a very small industry, it was perfect. But now that it is expected to explode 8 times over the next 2 decades, it's a huge impact. And that's something that we need to keep in mind. So one of the big questions that we've asked is, from a technology perspective, how can we make sure that, how do you think the ESG can be, how technology can help towards that? What are your thoughts around this, yeah, where the technology is being playing a major impact as far as ESG is concerned?
Yeah, no. So technology definitely plays a major impact when it comes to, when you look at the HVAC industry. I'll give you a perfect example. When you take a look at your car, if your car is not operating at peak capabilities, you'll most likely, burn more fuel, you'll burn more oil, and you'll kind of understand when you look at the mileage or the kilometer reading, whether the car is operating at peak efficiency. So that's one of the things when you look at the HVAC industry, very similar. When you have machinery that's not operating, it may not cool as much. But it may be taking as much electricity as it normally does, but it's just not cooling as much as it was. So really, technology can help us get to that area where we can look at environmental impact and not use as much electricity. That's the whole idea of ESG, is really, if you don't measure it, how do you start making an impact on it? And that's really what we're looking at is, let's start measuring all of this. It's very, and of course, the real measure is like how you had mentioned with the, the device where you've got that bill where you see every day from the IoT device, and you see that, but you see that more at a rupee level, and you can kind of see how much electricity is being drawn. But the reality is, and that's the reason why people like that device, is because it kind of gives you an idea of, hey, last week it was quite good, but this week is not so good. I'm taking more of my energy. So that's really what we're looking at, is technology plays a really big impact on the HVAC industry, because you can start now monitoring more and more of these devices. And really, that's the idea of making sure that we are making sure all the devices are operating at peak efficiency. And don't have any machines that are not working at suboptimal. And so that's kind of what we're thinking. When you take a look at it, though, from for your perspective, Ajit, you look at a lot of the consumers. How do you think the consumers will really benefit from all of this talk about ESG, technology, and HVAC?
The biggest challenge that the industry has is an OEM sells the product. The manufacturer is selling the product. It goes through the dealer channel and goes to the consumer. Now, let's say an average life cycle of that air conditioning equipment is maybe about 8 years to 10 years or maybe 15 years based on what kind of a product it is. The OEM doesn't have any connection in understanding what happens during the life cycle of this product. That's one issue. So from an OEM perspective, that's the issue. Now let's take it from a consumer's perspective. Now from a typical residential customers or even commercial for that matter, they have something called as a star rating. Now, star rating is a voluntary declaration by the manufacturers. Now, it is said that it is 5-star rated. So now, as a consumer, I buy a 5-star product or a 3-star product only on good faith, absolutely good faith.
Yeah.
I have no clue that this is 5-star. Now, let's assume when I buy the product, it's at 5-star. Now, what happens in the following years? Does that product remain a 5-star or does that star rating change completely? Now, what's important is to democratize that data. We need to make sure that this data is available to the customer who has paid for it. This is his product now, and he's paying for those energy bills. Now, an IoT device can completely transform that. We can actually make sure that the daily energy rating is available. He gets comparison as to when he bought the product, what was the energy efficiency, and over the next few years, after 4 years, 5 years, what is the variance that has come in. Now that's the big benefit that you can as a consumers they can get. Now here are the service providers in between. Now with the IoT device and with the online platform, what you can do is also start training these technicians on the job. And when that is through online videos and video libraries, but in small content, as and when they're going to attend a certain thing. Now that can also start fixing the 80% of the energy inefficiency. So an IoT platform is what the HVAC industry really requires to actually fix most of the inefficiencies in the energy efficiency. And energy efficiency over a long period can be actually brought about. And I think that's where this industry is going to head, and and at least let's be honest about it. I'm pretty excited that we're trying to be one of those guys who are trying to, to make this happen.
Very much so.
See, similar changes happening in other industries too, Manish?
So I'll tell you, I'll take a broader look at this. It's very easy for us to talk about ESG, and a lot of people kind of like that talk of ESG, but the reality is a lot of it's being pushed externally on them. So when I brought up the idea of British Petroleum, it's very clear when there's an oil spill that affects the environment and people are not happy, and so that's kind of it's a very easy way for the petroleum industry to get on board with ESG. Other ones may not be so. So what really is, there's a whole other wave around something called ESG investing. So what ends up happening is you've got funds that are looking at, we want to do investments in ESG companies. And that really is taking a look at all three of those parameters we talked about. Of course, profit is one. All those other things have to be there, but then they also want to make sure, what are they doing environmentally, what are they doing socially, and what are they doing from a corporate governance standpoint. So that is really driving the whole idea of, this will push a lot of companies that usually are under the ESG radar to kind of really say, hey, we need to be making sure that we pay attention to ESG, because we have potential investors that may not even look at us because we're nowhere near even participating in those areas. And again, an example would be, let's say, a software company. Perfect example would be Facebook. You know what? Nobody is looking at Facebook saying, oh my God, they have oil spills and things like that. But when you look at the three components, what are they doing from an environmental standpoint? Okay, probably, all of their buildings are probably being run by solar panels and things like that. So from an environmental perspective, they've got a clean bill of health. That's great. Socially, you could probably take a look at, okay, maybe the company is doing well socially because they've got equal pay, they've got a very diverse workforce. It's all over the world, male, female, all types of individuals. But what is the social impact of their product? How is Facebook? How is Instagram? How are they doing it? And so now there's been a lot of negative blowback in the last 1 year, 2 years, actually probably since the beginning when Donald Trump got elected, of how are these platforms changing the narrative of where they're based out of. So that's an example of where now they're probably also now saying, hey, people are looking at us in a very bad light. It may not be an oil spill, it may be it may be something else, which is a shift, could even be the leakage of consumer data. So that's a different type of spill from their perspective. So that's kind of where really all of this is happening, is from an ESG investing, is it affects a lot of companies because everybody's under the radar. Third point I'll take is corporate governance. So when you look at Facebook, people look at the top management of Facebook saying, what, you need to start coming to these committee hearings. You need to kind of be more part of the conversation, and you just can't say, hey, we're our market cap is over X amount of trillion dollars. We're really big. We've made a lot of money for our investors. If you look at the very first check that came into Facebook was from a guy named Peter Thiel. That guy has done fantastically well. But the reality is that's that's a very small sliver of society. How does it impact everybody else? So that's really what I see the change in ESG is. It's forcing every company, and even startups. So I work with a lot of startups, and I can even see they're starting to talk about it. I'm not saying that they're making any real big strides in it, but they're also saying, hey, ESG, let's make sure that we've got a diverse workforce and all those different things. So it is helping, and it is kind of shaping the narrative of the next set of leaders that are coming up. So that's kind of what I see from my viewpoint about ESG. Kind of switching gears, getting back to HVAC. Where do you see this happens with ESG and reducing the amount of preventative services and things like that? Does that really have an impact from your perspective?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. See, Manish, I'll tell you, preventive services is extremely critical. Let me explain it in a simple way. Let's take a cube of ice, put it into a palm, right? What happens to that ice? That ice melts. How does that ice melt? And your palm gets cold. How does that happen? Because the ice has now picked up the heat from your body, all right? And that's heat transfer that has taken place. Now, let's say if you take that ice and put it into a soil, you cover it up with mud, and then you put it back into your palm. Now, will it melt at the same pace? It will not. Why hasn't it not melted? Because that soil which is there around that ice is now acting as an insulation for that heat transfer to take place. That's exactly what happens in air conditioners. When you keep running an air conditioner, the air conditioner coils collect dust, and this dust comes from the room itself. All right. And then over a period of time, they form a layer. Now, when they form a layer, the heat transfer is lower. It doesn't cool faster. It takes a longer period to cool. Now, when it takes a longer period to cool, what is the impact? The impact is that your energy bills will continue to grow. Now, how does the industry solve this problem today? The industry handles this problem by saying that every 3 months, now let's assume if you're working with a great service provider, they say every 3 months we'll go and service it. Whether it is choked or it is not choked, whether you need a service or you don't need a service, that is the only way to go about and actually say that I'm going to go and clean that whole service. Now, do these service providers get regular reminders? Will that be possible? Is he available when he goes there? All that is a matter of assumption that, yeah, probably they're doing it. Now, let's say if you put it into an IoT platform, all right? Now, let's say these equipments are all IoT enabled and they're connected to a platform. What actually happens? Moment these machines get choked, all right? And remember, all machines don't get choked in a very similar way. It depends on your area, your location, the number, how long are you using it. So all these machines get choked at different times. Some may require to be cleaned once in 3 months, some may require once in 6 months, and some might even require once in a month. Right now, you cannot do it because you do not have that information. Now, as soon as an energy consumption goes up, all right, Wouldn't it be fantastic if the air conditioner sends that signal to the platform saying that, hey, listen, my energy bills are going up. The chances are this is because it is choked. Can an engineer come and clean it up? Now, that's fantastic, right? So now just think about if machines are kept clean on a regular basis. Now you can say that, I can clean it myself. Dude, you can clean only the filter, right, which is in the front.
Correct.
You can open the machine and clean the coil, whether you do a wet service or a dry service. It all depends upon the amount of the coil has been badly choked. It all depends whether I can use a strong blower and just blow that dust away from there. Sometimes this dust particles which are there, see what also happens in air conditioners is, the humidity from the air also gets sucked into those coils. So there's water being generated. There's water. I mean, the water which when an air conditioner runs is created is from the vapor which has come from the atmosphere. Now, when you put mud and you put that vapor together, what does it happen? It becomes like a paste, and that becomes really hard paste which is there on the coil, and it becomes a real good insulation for heat transfer. And you pay the price of energy efficiency. Your cost, your energy bills start rising, and you are now waiting and hoping that every 3 months that also the service provider shows up that you do the service. And I think that we need to move ahead. Technology can play a huge impact. The machine should tell you that I am choked, I need a cleanup, and a technician should be automatically intimated, and a platform and a tech platform can actually do this. And I think that's where this industry is moving. And that's exactly what at Pureblu we are trying to do. We
Right.
want to actually build that platform and that IoT device whereby consumers stand to benefit. And look at the huge, large impact. 80% of the inefficiency, again, as I said, is in the maintenance. Now we can fix that problem over a period of time when you have trained technicians through a digital platform, when you have machines which are talking directly to those technicians and getting that clean. And you as a consumer, when you get that update of your energy consumption, the impact of energy and onto the environment is huge. And I guess that's the role technology has to play in this. And I'm very excited, that we can fix this problem. It's not a problem that you have to give up on. You can fix it.
Hmm.
and uh,
Right.
and that actually motivates me, that we should take this up and say that, hey, listen, we're going to make this happen, we're going to fix this up. And but Manish, there are similar kind of things, and especially from your side, you track cars quite a bit, man. You you loved your cars. And where do you see the ESG impacts coming in that segment? Just to give an analogy to all our viewers as to how industries are going towards ESG kind of stuff.
Right. So the fact that I like cars, that's an understatement. And we have probably only another 5-10 minutes. This could take
Yeah.
maybe hours if we really dig into it. But the high level of where the automotive industry is going with in regards to ESGs, of course, is very obviously apparent when you hear about people talking about EVs, electric vehicles. So, of course, the common thing that I hear about EVs is saying, well, EVs, you plug it into your, electricity grid, and in India, I would say 85 to 90%, maybe even more. I don't really know the number, but 90% of the electricity grid is powered by dirty coal. So everyone is saying, well, what's the point? Instead of burning petrol or diesel at each individual car, what you're doing is you're basically moving that pollution from the car all the way out to some plant in the middle of nowhere, and that's feeding the electrical grid, and then you kind of power your car that way. So that's kind of the argument that people have, but I think that's because they're missing the bigger picture. The whole idea of, kind of the innovation on the technology side is things get faster, they get better, they get cheaper. I just saw an infographic saying that the latest MacBook computer is more powerful than one of the very first supercomputers that came out from a company called Cray Research. And those machines were millions of dollars. They took up the entire room, and now you get that in a laptop. And I wouldn't be even surprised if it's even like an iPhone 13, something like that. So that happens with innovation. So really, two big things are happening in the automotive space. One is the number of parts that are required when you compare an internal combustion engine versus an EV. it's much less. I've seen numbers where people say 70, 80%. So the number of parts is much less, which means there's a lot less chances of things going wrong. So that's one. Now, the second is, let's get to the idea of, well, it's just being, powered by a dirty, power grid. That is the way it is today. But I can tell you what everyone is shooting for is that you would have solar panels, whether it's at the house, the office, or even on the car. Some of the newer cars, coming out have a solar panel on the roof, but of course that only powers a little bit, doesn't power much. But you can imagine the innovation, like I mentioned, the Cray computer, from where it started to where we are today, it's like 1000x, 10,000x. So at some point, you will have a car that has a solar panel on top, and it's completely plugged. It's completely unplugged from the electrical grid. That's it. It's done. It's standalone. That car never has to touch a socket or a charging station ever again, because it'll get all of its electricity from the rays that hit the solar panel, and it'll charge your battery, and then you can go. And that's really where this is all going when it kind of plays into the whole ESG. Environmentally, they will be amazing. They'll be completely plugged away from the grid. You won't have to worry about it. So it's very, very clean energy. So it's not even talking a little bit and percentage. We're talking 100% clean energy. And then the beauty of it is, imagine we get to a point where you can even be driving and you don't even have to refuel, because the sun is charging your car as you're driving. Now, that of course sounds like it's very, very far off in the future. It may not be, but the reality is that is going to happen. Where you look at the innovation in the petroleum and diesel engines, there's not been much. Of course, when you look at the amount of horsepower, but it's still the same thing. The piston fires, the spark plug does it, and you kind of get your combustion engine going. And that's really where this industry is going when it comes to, when you look at ESG, and the EVs are definitely the future. And that's the reason, because it kind of fits into the entire ESG framework. And that's kind of what I see. So amazing. I know that's probably only 5-10 minutes. I could go on for hours. I know we're at our 30-minute limit, so I could continue. I could talk forever, but even I've found the light with the EVs. I'm a diehard car guy. I love hearing the engine, the exhaust, the smell of petroleum. But when you sit in an EV, and you just know that is the future. And part of it is what I call innovator's dilemma. People, they cling to the past, and they can't move forward. And I think that's what's happening with a lot of people, is they just cannot move forward. They are still stuck on, this is the way it's always been, and it'll continue. And I definitely feel like EVs are the future, and there's really no stopping it.
Wow, that's right.
Yeah,
amazing. Too good. So here's the whole perspective. I mean, before we wind up, now the big question that we're asking is, what if the HVAC industry just ignores ESG? We forget about the environment. We forget about the social impacts for our technicians and for all the people who work in the industry. What really happens, right? So here's my take on this whole thing. See, this industry is expected to grow 8 times. Okay, and that's going to happen. Now, that's a huge opportunity, right? For a country like ours, which need jobs desperately, this can create huge amount of jobs. And the beauty about this industry is it can create jobs from unskilled to very highly skilled. You can have mechanical engineers to loaders to diploma holders. The opportunity is huge. Why should we miss out on that opportunity? But without ESG, or without a climate change concern, if we continue to grow, what would happen? This government or any government in power will be forced to bring in regulation. We are already taxed at 28%. They will say that, hey, listen, we need to control this growth. And we need to hold this growth back. Otherwise, it has a huge impact. And think about the long-term impacts around it. How many jobs the opportunity that we had to create, the opportunity that we have to set up manufacturing, component manufacturing, all that would be lost because we did not have the vision to make sure that we were climate friendly. And I guess from that impact, the HVAC industry needs to wake up. And I guess that's also what motivates me, that building Pureblu is all about keeping the future in mind. We are building a platform that can help the future, the next generation that can come in. If 80% of the inefficiency is in maintenance and installation, I think we can fix it. We can do it now before it goes beyond to proportions that you just cannot manage. And I guess that's what keeps both of us going. And I guess
Pretty much.
with ESG, we have a huge say in that. Well, that's about the time that we've had. Fantastic discussion on the ESG front, and to all our viewers, most of these topics come from you telling us what is that you would like to hear. So feel free to write to us about what you would like to hear. This is something that we breathe day in and day out, only about technology and the HVAC and our industry. So write to us and tell us what you would like to hear us, and we'll pick up our next episodes around it. And before we wind up, for all of you who are in the air conditioning service providers who are providing services, this is the number which is there on the screen. You can call up and we will give you a demo of our platform, which you can use to manage your services. And well, we have viewers who are wanting to save energy and want to make sure their air conditioners are in great health. Then Smart AMC is the product for you. Call us on this number and we'll have an engineer explain to you what Smart AMC is all about, and you can make sure that you are not paying those energy bills for not keeping a clean and efficient air conditioning system. So that's about it. We have till time for today, and we're going to see you again with a new topic on the 8th of Jan. What do you say, Manish?
Yep, that's it. So I was going to say number 5 episode is going to be on 8th January in the new year. So
yeah,
that's
happy new year to you guys. We'll see you next year.
All right, sounds good.
All right,
take care,
bye-bye.
G.
See you. Thank you. See you. Bye-bye.